everyone. Welcome to another episode of Psychonaut Sessions, your home for all things psycho. This is your host, Daniel Moeller, and today we're going to take a look at a black and white anthology called Scream, Tales of Horror. This is not an old black and white anthology. This is very new. This was sent to me by my good friend Tony Lorenz, who has a story in here. If you do not know Tony Lorenz, I'll put a link to his Facebook page in the chat. But he is a very highly esteemed, very notable artist within the power comics genre. I have a book of his, Savage World, Jean Tar, as some of the most I would consider like the highbrow works, as Evan Husney calls him, the Citizen Kane of power comics. Tony Lorenz is responsible for those, or at least partially responsible for John Tar. He was the original artist. That was in the 80s. Now, I mean, he still's doing comics. He was a good friend of, or confidant of George Perez, and was part of a George Perez contribution project. He's contributed to many other projects and still is, and it looks like that we might be getting a new Power Comics tribute to Tony Lorenz book coming out soon from Floating World. I think Floating World, right? Oh gosh, I hope I got that right. If not, I will correct that in the description of the video. So stay tuned for that, to the Power Comics channel, as well as to Floating World Comics, because you'll be seeing some Tony Lorenz action coming soon. Love his work. Anyways, let's get into this. I think it's just Scream, and it's written in kind of the Spanish way, or it's iScream with an exclamation mark. Not really 100% sure, but that's okay. There's really no editorial at all or explanation within this book. It's a fairly recent book, 2007. So, quite a while ago, I guess. I don't know how many were made. I'll try to find out from Tony and put that in the description as well, or at least the comments, but looks like it was a group called Repercussion that was trying to get this work out, and it looks like it was just an opportunity to get some work out by multiple artists and teams within that horror anthology genre. So if you're not familiar with horror anthologies, we've already kind of covered that a litle bit. I covered Horrorium a couple of years ago by Kyle Strom. It's a very common horror motif to have a character like the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt, or Elvira, or something like a character, a horror character that's going to carry you through the stories, acts as a sort of host, as if this was like a show. So it's very indicative of the shows that were on TV way back in the day, and comics took on that motif as well, and it's just a lot of fun. This is our main character. I don't know who she is, but it's some kind of vampire bat woman who acts as the host of this particular item. So as we open this, what's interesting about this book is that character, she's part of the actual story in a way that you can see her on the opening splash page of the stories. She's a part. It's like she's there and kind of introducing that concept. We get some ads here for some books that were trying to come out at the time. I'm assuming this is 2007. Again, there's no editorial or copyright information in this book at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. But this artwork is dated 2007. So let's go through this. First story is called Last Man on Earth. It's written by Jason DeGroot, art by Zia Mauer, and letters by Haynes, one word. So we're just getting, all of these horror hosts, of whether it's a comic or a movie or show, it's just full of like jokes and horror innuendos, like these just little sayings and things that will have to do with the story and setting you up for it. But what we get here is the establishment that, okay, looks like we're in a zombie apocalypse, and that's exactly where we are. So the main character is this woman who's just kind of wandering the landscape. So it's very Walking Dead-esque, very, indicative and referential to Charlie Adler's work on The Walking Dead. With its coloring, the black and white, even just the very style with which it's drawn, incredible, and really just incredible work. I think that pages that are done with no text to just give a full establishment of the character and the landscape that they're in are actually very important. I try to do a little bit of that, but I know that I can do more of it, because for me, set and setting is 100% a character in the story. It is one of the characters, and you need to have your set and setting fleshed out just as well as any character that you have in the book, or as well as the plot. So looks like that she comes across a group of women in a truck, and she hitches a ride, and they're like, she's like, "Where are you taking me?" And they're like, "You'll find out soon enough, and keep your mouth shut." And they're not saying much. She's like, "Oh shit," and they go up to a compound. Now, what the vampire host lady stated is that this is actually, and I think this came out before Y the Last Man. If it is 2007, somebody correct me. I can't remember when Y the Last Man came out, but it's kind of a zombie apocalypse where the virus basically took over all men, mostly men, and so there's like women are around, of course, but some men are, but they're very rare, very, very rare. So they go up to this compound. Now, a lot of trigger warnings in this, because this is going to be very risque coming up, and kind of this is horror we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have a weak stomach, turn away. But they're like, it's time for you to be inspected by the Grand Leader. So they go up to this compound that's obviously heavily guarded, and they force her to strip down, completely naked. And they say, "All hail the Grand Leader," and he comes in and he's like, "Oh, hey, what do we got here?" And he's a gross, disgusting guy, and he's examining her. He's smacking the ladies around because they spoke out of turn. And in this world where obviously you would think, okay, like it's almost all women, so why are they so subservient to this man? And, he's testing her out, and he's like, "Okay, you'll do." Pretty much. And so what kind of gets revealed is like, well, the few men that exist are highly sought after and highly idealized because they're the continuation of the human race. So they need them. So the men are whoever's left as men need to be able to leverage that power. So he's basically testing her out for a mating ceremony and wants to mate with her. So she's getting prepped for that. This is later that evening, and a servant comes up who's fully wrapped. So this is in reference to the fully wrapped women on the cover, to basically be her maid. And she's upset and she's crying. She's like, "Oh no, this is an honor. You're going to be able to continue the human race, and the Grand Leader chose you, and he doesn't always choose everybody." And she's like, "What do you mean? What happens if he doesn't choose you?" And she takes off the bandages, and she's all scarred and messed up. So there's a little bit of backstory there. And then she goes to sleep that night, and she wakes up and going, "Oh, I've remembered something," and goes and gets her nursemaid, and she says, "Go get everybody else, because I remember something." And she was like, "How many of the women the Grand Leader decided they're worthy, how many of them actually get pregnant?" And she's like, "Well, none so far. The Grand Leader just says it's a matter of time." And she's like, "Get the women and bring them to the room." Now, I'm going to say something real quick here before I move forward story-wise. Art-wise, again, Gia Mora, what was her name? Just like amazing. Really well done. Very well skilled. We've got it's basically just people around talking, but we've got a lot of versatility in the angles with which things are seen. Obviously, very adept at being able to illustrate in a format that's going to have black and white tones. Um, just really love the line work. It looks, I'm imagining that this is all done with brush. Like every bit of it is all, it looks like it's all brush work. Um, which just, I wish I could work fully in brush. It's just, so dynamic. Love it. So they basically wake up the Grand Leader, and he's like, "What's the meaning of this?" And she's like, "Shut up, Leonard." I'm like, "Why are you calling me Leonard?" And basically, uh, she remembers him from before the fall of all the zombies and everything taken care of. This guy was a guy, she was a nurse, and this guy came in because he basically had a vasectomy. And so, this guy got a vasectomy before the fall, and well, I don't think he knew that he just happened to, but he decided to just leverage the fact that he was a man to try it, and that he survived the virus in order to just be in a place of power, and to just have sex with whoever he wants to have sex with. So she's like, so the last vasectomies are 99% effective in preventing pregnancy, and he's like, "What are you doing to me?" And she's like, "Nancy's method is 100%," and gets out a scalpel. And so all the women are going to go after him. She's like, "I do hope his insurance covers this." Ha ha ha. Just the usual, like, horror host, like, cracking jokes, and he's screaming on the other side of the door. But really cool thing. Um, Next story, we get this vampire lady who remains nameless, introducing the next story. A little bit different tone to this whole thing, but yet the same artist, written by different, or no, DeGroot wrote the last one, right? Yeah, Jason DeGroot wrote the last one. Zia Moa does the next story, but it's got a completely different tone. I think it's still brushwork, but the tones that are used, very different environment and feel. So good job on kind of, on the versatility of volume there. Some sort of screen tone, but I think this is probably like an early computerized screen tone template that was used. Patience is a virtue. We get a guy in an office. Here's our establishing shot. And basically he has a crush on this girl, and he can't, he can't seem to get it going on with her. So he's sad and he's lonely, and he goes home. That's a really weird. This is almost like, is this in the same world as the zombie apocalypse in a way? It's just like, who lives on the end of this country road out in the middle of nowhere but works in an office, and just there's like boards up, like he doesn't live well, and he's lonely, and he gets this pamphlet in the mail. It says "lonely" on the pamphlet. $50 for Mantis Blossom Cologne, guaranteed to win her hearts. Pheromones, blah blah blah. He's like, I ain't that lonely. But then as he continues on with his evening, he's like, I am lonely, and he sends $50 to Mantis Blossom Incorporated. So if anybody knows anything about praying mantises, I think you know what's coming up. He uses the cologne, essentially, and tries to interact with the woman. Doesn't work immediately, but then he wears it more and more each day, and he's telling them, hey, this isn't working. They're like, you got to keep wearing it. And essentially this woman's like, okay, I think I will go out with you. And he keeps using more and more of it, and it's like, okay, not only will I go out with you, but this next day she's like, meet me in the copy room in 2 minutes. Like, she's ready to get it on, and he's excited. I actually don't like these tones as I'm moving on, and I think they are computerized. This doesn't look like regular screen tone or zip tone. It looks like an old, like the old type of like tiled wallpaper that you would get from like a Microsoft Windows 97 or something. It just I don't like it. Wish they would have done regular Zipatone. But the art is, other than that, is fantastic. So she meets him in the copy room, and of course, if you can imagine, she just starts getting it on, and she just starts basically eating him, because that's what happens when a praying mantis gets it on. The female eats up the male, and then there you go. Silly boy, I specifically told him no more than 2 drops. So she was the company on the other side of the phone. Fun, fun, fun. It's like great. Both of them, of these written by De Groot, are very much like centric towards female overpowerment of the male, and very very interesting. Very common motifs in both of them. I caught that right away. All right, so next, ladies and gentlemen, we get Tony Lorenz. So Tony Lorenz, I love his art. I love it back in the 80s. I love it now. If this is early 2007, I still love it. He's so dynamic. There's like each panel of his artwork, I feel like could be a t-shirt that I could just wear, and it just has this pop art feel to it. I love it. So we get this man in a curio shop, and he's going in, and this is a very interesting story. By the way, it's a very interesting story. But there's a Halloween party at his office, and he needs a gag gift. So he went to the curio shop because he thought he could get something scary. She's like, a gag gift, go ahead and browse. And that's what I love about Tony Lorenz, is he puts so much effort into each panel. You get so much detail in the environment of where you're in, the expressions, the emotion that he pushes through. And then also, I mean, like, look at the way that this character is designed. There's just a pop art pizzazz that he's able to add to it. So he's going through, and again, look at these awesome details. You get a skull, brain, and a jar, and heart, and just like so much fun. You totally get the feel of this environment. So she checks in on him after a while. It's like, did you find something? He's like, yeah, he was drawn to something, but it's not really that scary. And she's like, oh, there's an interesting story behind this. And it's a picture, and she says she was once given it to her by a young man, and he's a very pleasant young man. So here's the picture in a frame. So this is called Rainbow Bridge. Okay, Jason DeGroot wrote all these, so pretty good writer. And Tony Lorenz. And so this guy did the letters and the tones on this, Mark Haynes. So she says, you might say he burned too many bridges. It's called Rainbow Bridge, and it's where all the pets go when they die. Da, 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 da. So this is the story of this man, and he's with his grandma, and she's looking at this particular picture, and she's like, isn't it wonderful? This is where the Rainbow Bridge, this is where also, she basically is telling him the same thing that the curio lady was telling this guy, right? It's where cats and dogs go when they die, and it's a beautiful place. He's like, yeah, whatever, I don't give a shit. She's like, what's that, dear? Nothing. And she's like, will you give this to your mother? I made this for your grandfather years ago, and now that he's passed on, I think she'd like to have it. And he's like, who'd want a worthless piece of junk? She's like, that's a good boy. It's like, look, I gotta go, or I'll be late for work. And she's like, she's just trying to be nice and sweet, and he's just a total punk. He's a total douchebag. It's like, yeah, I don't care, whatever. I love the way these tones are actually working on. They're very basic, but they work really well on Tony's work. So he takes it, and he's just like, whatever. And as he leaves, there's a bird in a cage, and he just decides to rattle it because he's a freaking asshole. Such a nice boy. So she just has no clue that her grandson's a piece of shit. And he takes off. His name's Arlen. And he goes into a truck and he just kind of tosses it and cracks it. He's like, oops. And then he goes to work and his boss is getting on to him about, doing something. And he's like, hey, did you fix the latch on that cage like I asked you? And he's like, oh, I haven't gotten around to it. And we'll get to it. And, basically tells him he's got to go clean up a mess in the kennel. So he works for some sort of dog kennel or dog pound where he collects dogs. And he has to be told what to do. And he's about it like a freaking teenager. Dumb dog, that's disgusting. And the dog's like, oh, yeah. And he's like, get off. And freaking kicks it. Like, kicks this freaking dog. And then takes off just whistling. Do. And the poor dog's whining. Oh, this guy deserves to die. And then he says, there's a call on stray cat and kittens. You need to go get them. So, later, he goes and picks them up. And the lady's like, thanks for picking these little angels up, young man. They looked so hungry. I didn't know what else to do with them. And he's like, yeah, tell me, young man, will you try to find them a good home? And he's like, nah, we'll probably just put them all to sleep as soon as I get back. And she's like, what? And he's like, have a nice day. And laughs about it. Total douche. I mean, Tony's work is emotive, and I love it. And you just know very clearly what's happening. He's a master storyteller. Even if all the words weren't here, you kind of get it. So he's going along, and it looks like he's about ready to go ahead and kind of throw them into the river, I guess. You guys want to go for a little swim, but he didn't fix the latch. Remember, he was supposed to fix the latch. And they took off. And he's like, shoot, But then honk, honk. And here in comes a diesel and fucking takes him out. Thank God. And so here we are. Really nice textures, actually. Tony. Looks like that might be like ink on sponge. I really like that on those gravestones. It says funeral. It's like one person, his grandma. So his mom didn't even attend. She's looking at the picture. And so there's this narration, and Arlen's about to make the discovery of the afterlife. He's about to discover that his grandmother was right. It is doggy heaven. That picture is a picture of doggy heaven. I don't believe it. It's so beautiful. And he's like thinking like, oh, this is wonderful. Just like grandmother said, you're all so beautiful, and actually seems to care about them. You got rainbows. He's in a white robe. And then they get angry. And they start going after him. And they fucking tear him to pieces, as they should. And the guy at the curio shop is watching this happen as it's happening. And runs out screaming, and there's our vampire bat lady. Like, excellent job, Tony. Just like, animals aren't easy, and especially animals in action and, communicating what they're doing like this. Like, excellent job. And I like when Tony does these just very just jarring broad brush strokes. Like, these are usually like action strokes, and they're usually pretty skinny. I will sometimes usually make them really skinny. But I want to be more in the practice. I like how thick and jarring they are. It kind of adds to the just like thorns coming in. I really love it. It's freaking awesome. Way to go, Tony. And then we get a couple of pinups from this vampire bat lady. So pretty cool. Haynes, I guess that was the letter. So I guess he's an artist himself. This one's kind of fun and cartoony. This one's got runes and magic shit. And then we got one by Craig Walden. I don't know who any of these people are other than Tony, so apologies. and I didn't do deep. Oh, 22. So maybe this was pretty recent. Maybe that front cover image was just an older image, but this was pretty. I guess it would be. It wouldn't be 2007 because if you look on the back, it's a Comics Wellspring ad. So I guess this is a pretty recent book. I wish it had an editorial. That's my only thing. I wish the fellows at, because I like a good editorial, somebody sitting down and kind of explaining what it is and who the creators are, and it would have been cool. But I like it. Really had a lot of fun with this book. That's a great image. And we do get some kind of cool ads by Repercussion Comics, so go check them out. Find their works, buy their works. Oh, always good for supporting independent comics. And also at the same time, check out Tony Lorenz. Link to his work will be in the chat. Or not in the chat, in the description. Anyway, thanks everyone out there. Stay safe and keep it psycho.